And I want to talk about that in relation to OU Nebraska and what being a Sooner means to Sooners. So the statistical history goes like this. Nebraska has 967 wins. Oklahoma has 919. Nebraska has 110 first team All-Americans. Oklahoma has 167. Nebraska has 5 national titles. Oklahoma has 7. Nebraska has 46 conference titles. And Oklahoma has 150. Nebraska has 2 Heisman winners. And Oklahoma has 7. However, since the last time that Oklahoma and Nebraska had played prior to today, Oklahoma has seen 2 Heisman winners, 5 Heisman finalists, 4 CFP appearances, and won 7 conference titles. Nebraska has, well, not. Okies really just want Nebraska to keep their end of the rivalry is all. It's a different kind of energy in this rivalry than, say, Texas. Oklahoma and Nebraska are more siblings than, say, even OU and Oklahoma State in more ways than one. And one of those ways, one of those reasons, is today's game between OU and Nebraska, marking the 50th anniversary of the one we call the game of the century. In 1971, number 1 Nebraska played number 2 Oklahoma in a game that not only would help decide the national championship, but set up the crowning of Nebraska's first Heisman winner and the first ever wideout to win the Stiff Arm Trophy the next year. Skip Bayless was there. He who co-hosts FS1's Undisputed. For those that don't know, Skip is a bigger OU fan than a Dallas Cowboys fan. And if you ever heard my man Skip talk about the boys, you know just what that means. If you don't, take these facts into account. Skip wrote 2,500 plus words for the Fox Sports app about attending the game of the century in 1971. I recommend you read it. I did, and in that piece, I learned Skip majored in English and history at Vanderbilt. Skip has never missed an Oklahoma game. He even taped the game scores to his dorm room wall at Vanderbilt. I learned we both interned at the Oklahoman in college, and Skip drove his white 67 Camaro SS 350 from Nashville to Norman so he wouldn't miss the game of the century. So when he wrote about being at the most watched college football game in history, where 50 million tuned their TV sets to see the Huskers and the Sooners getting buck about it, it hit different for me. Here's a sample of Skip on the click-clack keyboard. Must have sounded like an Under Armour commercial in there. Quote, less than 24 hours after Brit Lit class, I was sitting 5 rows up from the 50-yard line watching the Sooners and the Huskers warm up. Only now do I fully appreciate that precious perch. My high school friend and teammate Bruce Scott was also attending OU on a basketball and golf scholarship. Somehow, he had finagled me a seat in the OU Letterman section. The kid from Brit Lit, who had just covered Alabama's rout of Vanderbilt, was sitting pretty among OU's best athletes in sports other than football. But the day was right out of, well, Wuthering Heights, ominously cold and gray, with winds gusting to 25 miles an hour. Nebraska was a 1-point favorite at Owen Field. Seeing the Huskers up close made me sweat. In their white jerseys with their scarlet pants, they just looked bigger than our guys. Number 75, Larry Jacobson, who had won the Outland Trophy for the best interior defensive lineman. He was listed at 6'6", but looked 7 feet, Bigfoot, in helmet and pads. Defensive tackle Rich Glover, who would win the 1972 Outland, and defensive end John Dutton, who would be drafted 5th overall and eventually play for the Cowboys, looked more like buildings than football players. The Sooners, in crimson jerseys and cream pants, came off cooler and quicker during warm-ups. But the Huskers' pregame drills were run with scary militaristic discipline and urgency. My better judgment told me my bragging rights were in jeopardy. Understand, I grew up hating the Texas Longhorns, but I had always had grudging respect for Nebraska. End quote. As did I, Skip. as did I. The difference in the game ended up being Johnny Rodgers tossing off Greg Pruitt and running a punt back for a TD, and that's how Johnny Rodgers became, for the old heads, what Darren Sproles is to my generation. I was born 16 years after the fact, with an appropriate fear of Tom Osborne, Tommy Frazier, Lawrence Phillips, Amon Green, and a quarterback who couldn't throw named Eric Crouch. Folks feared Nebraska like they feared God of the Old Testament. For that Nebraska option was the forever flood that was capable of rushing over and decimating everything you loved. You just had to hope your team made it onto the boat. Though it didn't make my list of the top 5 games of the century, for which I picked some from the last 2 centuries, of course, Oklahoma's defeat of Ohio State at the Shoe is one of the most important football games of my life. It is the event most responsible for my taking the red pill from Morpheus to find out just how far down this rabbit hole goes. For 4 years after I made that video on a step mill at a gym in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I'm here now talking college football year-round at Fox Sports. And to mark this game, I brought my framed photo of Baker Mayfield planting the OU flag to the ultimate college football road trip stop in Norman because some folks are just visual learners. In Oklahoma, the Sooners are the pro team. No matter what anybody tries to tell you about the OKC Thunder, even during the Kevin Durant years, fall Saturdays in Oklahoma are for church. And the cathedral in Norman is full of more than 84,000 born-again OU fans 6 times a year because once upon a time, OU football was all Oklahomans had. In grad school at OU, I wrote a piece for the OU Daily, the school newspaper, about that because I wanted to understand why folks I knew who couldn't stand each other agreed to root for OU come the second weekend in October when OU travels south of the Red River to play the Texas Longhorns at the Cotton Bowl. I found, unlike Texas, which was once a country unto itself, Oklahoma's self-esteem is wrapped almost entirely in being the best at college football. You see, Texas wants to be good at football. Oklahoma has to be good at football. We have to win. Through tornadoes, the OKC bombing, the Dust Bowl, the worst tragedies to ever hit this state, OU football remains. It remains because OU President George Lynn Cross, a botanist, unearthed those remains and made them the most prominent part of the university when he famously and facetiously wanted to build a university the football team could be proud of. Cross believed if Oklahoma won football games, the state would be better for it. As Coach Switzer said at the unveiling of his statue outside of the stadium on November 5th, 2011, when I was there to cover it, quote, "We benefit from George Lynn Cross. He told me in 1944, when he became president of the University of Oklahoma, Oklahomans had a mass inferiority complex. He wanted to do something to combat this depression. And the best way we can do it, to bring pride to ourselves and in our state, is to have a winning football program," end quote. Cross and the Regents sought to recruit a winner to lead Oklahoma and found one in Jim Tatum. But Tatum didn't get the job at Oklahoma because of his coaching prowess alone. No, a respectful and solemn assistant by the name of Bud Wilkinson had more to do with that. The Oklahoman sports columnist Barry Trammell, dean of sports around here, told me when Tatum interviewed, he brought Wilkinson with him, and Cross was so impressed with Wilkinson, they decided they were going to hire Tatum. But Tatum's tenure didn't last very long. The coach from McCall, South Carolina, became upset about how he was asked to coach. So after leading Oklahoma to an 8-3 record, he quit. And he became the head coach at Maryland the following year. Meanwhile, Wilkinson was promoted and went about orchestrating 31 and 47 game winning streaks in 17 years as head coach at Oklahoma. His 1950, 1955, and 1956 national championship teams are legendary. And his mark on the university is everlasting. And his winning program helped resurrect a downtrodden state. The state of Oklahoma could be proud of its football team, of itself, once more. That's why Oklahoma football matters. And it's the reason why it matters to me, too. We hustle. I hustle. We will outwork you. I will outwork you. You want to beat Noki? You better pack a lunch, because we're going to be here all day. In Nebraska, you're built the same way. Today was a demonstration of such. Yeah, you'll be back, Huskers. Next to us, right where you belong. Stay low. Keep those feet driving. Hey, kinfolk, I appreciate you for watching. Subscribe here and ring the bell so you don't miss the latest upload to the channel. Also, be sure to watch more videos here, like FS1 Studio shows and the best from Fox Sports and Fox Sports Digital.